All right, welcome everyone. No, you're not seeing things. It is Friday afternoon, and you are watching a brand new Mutant XPerience podcast. Couple reasons why we're not broadcast. We didn't broadcast last night. Number one, we have tonight, or I guess tonight in the UK and today in the US, a very special guest, longtime Third Strike player from the United Kingdom, Vinny, aka Rakurai. How's it going, Rakurai?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
So we're so a couple reasons. Number one, it's just a little bit more convenient, I guess, because of the time difference,
Yeah.
to do it on this day. But number two, I went back to work, and so you know, I'm not as free as I used to be on Fridays, and so I'm thinking of moving the podcast actually to Friday afternoons, Friday nights. I'm not really sure because I have to work on Friday mornings now. But anyway,
Well,
that's just something for those of you who are wondering where the podcast was last night. I was debating whether or not we should air it, but then we just finally decided we just do it today. So anyway, so what's up, Vinny? I know I hadn't seen you since I visited the UK
uh,
back in when was that? That was 2016,
that
April. Yeah, wow.
it almost seemed like yesterday. I mean, we still
Yeah.
have Violet City's still standing, so that's a good sign.
Yes.
Yeah, that was a good time. I was quite surprised it came down. So, yeah, that was a good session, I think.
Yeah,
It's only
I
one.
mean, the main reason why, UK, I went to the UK is because, I know that the current crop of Third Strike players in the UK, they seem to really love the game, they enjoy the game, and I just wanted to see, what that community was about, and it's great. And so, obviously later on the show we might talk about Volume 8 of Gutter Trash. Hopefully you'll be there, Vinny. Are you
I'll,
are you
I'll try. I'll try my
are you
best.
planning to attend? Okay.
I've got a busy schedule next few
Yeah.
months, but I'll still can do. Yeah.
But tonight's gonna be a really good show because I've interviewed two UK players on the show before, uh, Harley or Howry, however way you want to
Harry.
pronounce it,
I don't know what
last
it is.
season, and then obviously on the season two debut I had Virtuofu. But they're both next gen Third Strike players, and they weren't really around when Third Strike was really at its height of
No,
popularity in the
I certainly
UK.
don't remember them anyway.
Yeah, but
No,
you were there, Vinny,
I was certainly there
and
probably for most of the part.
so for those of you who are on the stream who wanna learn more about the history of UK Third Strike, I know I would do because I hardly know anything. I know pretty much next to nothing about how Third Strike kind of came up in the UK. Then you guys should get comfortable and grab some popcorn or something because I feel like Vinny's got a lot of stories. But before we get into the scene, Vinny, let's talk a little bit about yourself. I mean, how did you get into first of all, where were you born? Where did you grow up? And how did you get into video games, just in
yeah,
general?
I grew up in England.
Hmm.
I'm British born. Yeah,
The accent kind of
I'm
gives
not
it away,
sorry,
right?
but surprisingly I'm Chinese, so but
Uh-huh.
people wouldn't realize that. Yeah, I mean, yeah. So I grew up in Warwick, which is a little small town in the centre of near the centre of England, near Birmingham, if anyone knows that. Yeah, I was fascinated by computers in general and stuff. And one of the things I loved the fact is that you press something on the keyboard and something appears on the screen. And as a kid, I thought, wow, it's awesome. Yeah, so I got my first computer, which was I'm talking very ancient here, but I had an Amstrad CPC 6128 with 128K of RAM, and that was yeah, it's very ancient, but surprisingly that was actually a pretty good gaming platform for for the time.
Hmm.
um, and yeah, I was introduced to computer games. I was hopelessly addicted to some of the games, especially the ones where you had uh, those old-fashioned joysticks
Hmm.
where you got everything's in one place and you have to basically destroy the stick rushing it left and right to play those sports games. I think it was Daley Thompson or something like that. And yeah, that I mean, those games are fun. There was other games on top of that as well. Not mainly fighting games, but just general like arcade style shooters. I think maybe a few like Captain Commando. No, not Commando, which I think was a Capcom game, and several other things. Um, there was a huge load of. I particularly love like the arcade style games and stuff. I don't really have the patience to like play like real time strategy games like Command and Conquer and all those. I was more like into like reflex type games. And what was interesting later on, in my childhood, I came across Street Fighter, the actual port for the Amstrad, which when I look back in hindsight was hilariously bad.
Yeah.
Coding was awful, and you only had one attack button. So I don't know how I managed to get. I enjoyed it and stuff. The game was absolutely trash, by the way. I didn't enjoy that at all. It was just something I thought show up. But that was like I'd say that was the very first time I had experience with Street Fighter, and I didn't really think about it much then. But later on, when the consoles came out, I had a Nintendo NES. Everyone loves that.
Uh-huh.
But I had a neighbor which I grew up with in my same neighborhood. His handle goes by the name of Songro, and he was basically the Street Fighter fanatic in the neighborhood. I mean, he had he had a Super Nintendo. Everyone was jealous back then, so we would all like to go to his house and just have a few sessions and stuff. And that was the first time I had experience playing Street Fighter.
Mm.
And I still remember the way I was winning by just mashing low light kick, and that was all I was doing. I couldn't do special moves, nothing like that. I was just like mashing buttons. But it was so much fun, and I kept up with it actually. I mean, I never owned Street Fighter until maybe like when I was at uni. Before then, I used to just play Street Fighter when I just go to friends' houses and stuff, and try and learn a few things. Then I had Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, the really bad PC port, which was broken as hell, which required like 6 patches to fix, which is still broken today. I started getting to that. I started learning combos. I had a very old Super Turbo guide, which was made by Graham Wolf back then, and I think it's still around. But that introduced me to the world of combos, and I'm thinking like, I never see any of my friends do all this crazy stuff, like like 10-hit combos with DJ or Chun Li and all that. And I thought, if I can start learning these things, I might actually be a little bit popular. So I learned a few things and stuff. I was still bad. I was still playing on pad, so I couldn't do anything for to save my life. But yeah, that was that period. Then there was uni
At
time.
this point, right? I'm sorry to interrupt, Vinny, but at this point, you hadn't actually competed at all in the UK FGC. You were just playing.
Never at all. This is where university came in.
Okay.
I mean, in fact, actually, just before I went to uni, I was actually introduced to First Strike by Sandro. He had a Dreamcast, and we just like had a few mashes and smash up and stuff. I enjoyed it, but I wasn't really willing to take it to that level. So I went to university. I went to Wolverhampton, which is about an hour away from Warwick, just north of Birmingham. I think actually, if I remember. And I studied there for a bit. Just before I get to that point, I do have a very fond love of arcades. When I was a kid, I used to just like go absolutely bananas when I see all the neon lights and stuff and all the flashing machines and the insert coins screen on everything. That was really awesome. I was just hooked on that. But going back to university.
Actually, let's stay with that arcade thing. Actually,
yeah,
I'm curious, Rakurai, because obviously I didn't grow up in the UK.
Yeah.
But how how popular were arcades in England? I mean, obviously I grew up in I spent most of my formative years in Southern California, and there were arcades everywhere. And if we're talking about Street Fighter machines and Neo Geo machines, they were in like every under laundromat. I don't know what you call laundromats in the UK. What do you call them?
Like place where you do your washing
Yeah,
or
yeah, places where you do your
yeah, laundrettes.
laundrettes. I like
We
that.
had him. Yeah, I think we had him in like the local chippy, and
Yeah.
but but the problem is my area wasn't exactly like hustle and bustle like
Uh-huh.
Manchester or Birmingham. I mean,
Okay.
Warwick was like a little small town, so we didn't have anything like that.
Oh, okay.
You know, I was brought up just like playing on my own,
Okay.
being alien to what was happening in the outside world.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, you know, I just the arcade scene back then. I didn't actually really think about it much because I thought it was just a normal thing.
Hmm.
But there used to be loads of these places in up in Blackpool, Preston, and Brighton, all the pier sort of resorts and stuff.
Hmm.
There was actually a really big boom on that, and I think I was still about 7 or 8 back then,
Hmm.
but I definitely remember just walking mile like literally 10, 10, 15 minutes just walking down one straight road. And all you're seeing on the right side was just flashing lights and arcades and everything. I think it was,
Wow.
maybe back then, I think it was pretty big.
Hmm.
And I saw so many places where they had Mad Dog McCree, which is that laser disc light gun shooter. That was actually a really popular game back then. And
Uh-huh.
sometimes we just watch and just watch the cutscenes and stuff. It was pretty awesome.
Hmm.
But those are kind of like my memories for arcades back then.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, going back to uni though, so I loved arcades back then. Um, I was going in between lectures just because basically the university is based in a city, so you got different buildings and stuff, but you still had like the shops and everything in between them.
Okay.
So just walking between lectures, I was wanting to grab a bite to eat.
Hmm.
So it was lunchtime, and then just down there's like a little like roundabout area. So I was just went down like this down here area just because I saw some doner kebab places and stuff. And just on the left hand side, very tucked away, it almost looked like a dump. A sign saying Broad Street Amusements,
Hmm.
and from the outside of it, it just like looks like a dump. I mean, it doesn't look like anything like those neon lights and stuff. It was basically, pardon my French. Well, I shouldn't say that. It was a shithole, basically. So I walked in just curious. I saw a few fruit machines. I thought, and I was about to walk out, and then this lady came to the counter saying, there's more machines at the back. You know, come through. Okay, I'll go through. And then all I saw was fighting games. I saw Marvel 1, I saw Tekken 4, Third Strike on no, actually Third Strike came later, but I saw Super Turbo on a big, probably like a 32-inch screen on a very retro style cabinet. The cabinet was quite makeshift. It was just one of the things they just put together very quickly. And if anyone comes through, because they normally have the machines turned off just to save electricity. So I walked through, they turned on all the machines, and all of a sudden, all the machines, they had a trap mode on, and all of a sudden they just came alive. And I thought,
Wow.
I need to be here. There was no one around, which was a bit annoying, so I pumped in a few games. The credit price was very cheap back then. It was only 30p a credit.
Hmm.
That's basically peanuts. So, and being a student, that was perfect. So I got good at Marvel 1 for a bit. And then, yeah, this was lunchtime. So when I finished, so I had to go back to lectures and stuff.
And what was it
Um,
called? Broad Street?
Broad Street Amusements, because Broad
Bro-
Street was the name of the street was down
Mhm.
on. And this is around 2000 and oh no, it's even beyond that. I went to uni in 2000.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's around about 2000.
Mhm.
Yeah, so on that same day, I finished my lectures and stuff, and I thought, I'll come back and have a few more games. And then then I went back into the arcade, and all of a sudden I saw like 3 or 4, maybe 5 people in one place,
Mhm.
and they were all playing Super Turbo, and they were playing on a ridiculous, well, for my time, it was a pretty ridiculous level. Um, I believe like the normal speed that people play Super Turbo was like Turbo Speed 2 or something. But these guys were playing on the maximum highest turbo setting. It was almost like I wouldn't play this level if I was in a tournament because it's just ridiculous.
Mhm.
But these guys were actually really, really good. I was actually quite surprised on the level people took these games to a point they're actually having to, they put money in over and over just to re-challenge and stuff. I thought, wow, there must be a bit of a culture here. So I jumped on thinking I know a few things, and I got blown up in like 10 seconds because it was just too much. And the sticks were absolutely dreadful. They were. We never had the luxury of having Japanese samurai sticks or anything decent. They were basically just like they're not even like standard sticks that you find anyway. It was just like makeshift basic micro switch things. The actual stick lever had probably like a throw of maybe like half a centimeter or even less than that. They hardly moved at all. So it was actually very common for those sticks to break, and they replaced them and stuff. But aside all that, Third Strike came in, and then people started getting to that, and they took that game seriously as well. And because I played Third Strike just before going to uni, I thought I'll give it a go. I did a bit better, but obviously I still got blown up because there's a few things I didn't know about. So that was that. That was for about maybe about a year, 2 years, just playing casually in the arcade while I was at uni. And then
what were some of the? Do you remember some of the players that were really good, like at the time, that the players there that were like that you kind of went, wow, like the people you couldn't touch, like.
Yeah, there was this one person. I think his name was Diesel. He was
Diesel.
Yeah, Diesel. But he was a decent guy. I mean, he's quite humble. Probably maybe a little bit arrogant and stuff. But other than that, he's got a good heart for the game. So he was actually one of like the dreaded players that people don't want to play, because he is legitimately very good at Super Turbo. In fact, that was his main game back then. So fast forwarding on, so played casually 1 or 2 years, wasn't that great. I was just playing the Shoto characters. I didn't know Yun, Yang, or any of those, just like Ryu, Ken, and Kuma, because that's what everyone was playing. So fast forwarding on, I think it was around about probably my year break at university, and this and Songro came back to me because we were still playing Third Strike and stuff, and he thought hey, there's this tournament running in Luton, which is just outside of London. It's a bit it's actually outside of London, but it's quite close. There's this tournament called Absolution 2002, and they're doing Third Strike down there. I thought I want to bring you along because you play this game, and I thought I'd see how good you are. Okay, cool. I didn't really expect to do much. In fact, I was very nervous because I don't know anyone. So I popped down. First time I saw Third Strike on a Japanese cabinet, and it just looked 10 times better than the trash I saw at Wolverhampton. And that's the first time I actually really start to see the real fighting game community. And I entered. The stick broke halfway and stuff, but other than that, it was just I said I was expected to do well. So that was over. Songro came 4th place, which was actually quite impressive. And so we went to the hotel later on just to catch with a few people I've met and stuff, and just say hello, just have a chill out and stuff. And all the players were bringing all their consoles and stuff. They even had Second Impact running because they didn't have a copy of Third Strike. That was hilarious. So I thought there's this guy which I met, and he's still around. His name is Armour. Big shout outs, Gareth Palmer. He introduced me to most of the fighting games, and it was the first time I actually got properly bodied on Alpha 3. I mean, I thought I knew how to play the game, but this guy was playing again on a completely different level, doing combos which I wasn't expecting. I thought, yeah, I'm not playing this game again. I'll stick to Third Strike. But yeah, ever since then. And by the way, Armour was actually the first player to actually properly introduce me to Yun. So I can definitely say that he's one of the very first OG Yun players in the UK. I think he was probably the only player using Yun. And he was doing Genijin combos like no tomorrow and stuff. He was doing the juggles in the corner and stuff. And back then I thought, this super art's rubbish, but he actually makes him look really sick. So I thought, I'll practice that. I want to do that stuff. And so I practiced on the Dreamcast for a while. And this was on my university break. Actually, maybe, no, I think it was just around like the second year. So I was getting into that, practicing Yun. And then when I went back to uni and tested out Yun, people were kind of laughing at my character selection. Yun, who's he? He's not Ryu, Ken, or okay, whatever. I'll just that was the first time I actually got a double-digit streak. I think it went on for maybe about 20, 21 wins, and then people were actually queuing up to try and beat me. And I thought, I feel special here in a way, not in an arrogant way, but it was like one of those. it's one of those experiences where you just don't really think about it until you actually start playing and actually putting the practice in.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, when you, I think it goes for everyone. When you get that experience, you kind of want to explore a little bit more about it. Trying to, it's almost like you discover you have like maybe some hidden talent.
Mm-hmm.
And as with any like undiscovered hidden talent, you try to explore it and try to maybe evolve from it.
Mm-hmm.
So I took it to the next level and maybe started messing around with one character which I found interesting because I saw him play at a tournament,
Mm-hmm.
and that was 12.
Mm-hmm.
So I messed around with 12 for a bit, and I practiced for a bit. Then went back to the arcades, and believe it or not, I got a 21, 22 win streak with 12.
Wow.
And I'm thinking.
And this is the arcade.
Wow,
This is the Broad Street, right,
this
near your college.
this is in Wolverhampton Broad Street,
Yeah.
and it came to a point people thinking 12 was cheap, and I thought, wow, he must be like a really good character.
Uh-huh.
So I thought maybe I might main 12 as one of my main characters in the roster for a while.
Yeah.
And then after that I started to pick Yuri, and I started to pick other sort of random characters. I can't use all characters generally, but I do have a fair selection in that. And that gave me an interesting eye-opener about my personal talents for fighting games. Because oddly enough, before that, I thought my genre, as in my specialist gaming section, was first-person shooters.
Oh, wow.
Because I actually, in fact, I mean, that was one topic I'll probably leave for later, but the first game I took competitively was Doom 2. And that's when I actually started playing top players and stuff and doing, taking it to that next level sort of thing. But that died down because Doom was getting overrun by Quake, and no one's interested. But yeah, so I was in that moment when I was like practicing like some random characters and stuff, and then I started entering the ranking battles, which were run in Stratford in London, which was actually just an area I've just moved out from, surprisingly. But
well, before we get to the ranking battles, I wanted to ask you a little bit more about Absolution. Because most of my viewers are from America, and so they have absolutely no idea what Absolution is. But back in the early 2000s, Absolution, would it be fair to say that Absolution was the UK's version of Evolution?
Yeah, pretty much. And it was actually run by an American guy, and his guy goes by the name of Ulysses, and I think he was part of some organization group, Ulysses Professional Gaming. And he actually came down to I think maybe he was in the UK for a short period, maybe he was studying or something, but he was like the go-to guy to organize events. Maybe he just wanted to try and get some fighting game scene running. So we give a lot of respect to that guy, because I think without him we probably won't have any fighting game tournament running or anything like that. But quite be wrong, because I've heard from Ryan Hart that there were Super Turbo tournaments back in the time when he got bust up and all that. He was using Akuma and all that. So, but he'll probably know more about that because he's been playing games longer than me, obviously. But
was 2002 the first Absolution?
I think it is actually. I definitely haven't heard of any other like Absolution related tournaments or in that series. But that was like the first major one, because there was even like a few guests from. I think there was one guy called Chugi. He was from Japan and he uses Hugo. Yeah, there was definitely an international presence. We had Mimosa back then, and I think he was the guy who actually won the whole tournament, and he was basically untouchable. We went back to the arcade where they held the tournament next day, and he was getting like 40, 45 win streaks. It was just ridiculous. His win count was just off the charts, and that was my first experience in thinking, I really want to be that guy who beats him. And obviously, with his experience, I pretty much got bodied, and I didn't stand much of a chance. I think he was just using Ken back then. I think he still uses Ken today, but that was what his go-to character back then. And answering to the stream chat, unfortunately, there's no footage from Absolution 2002. But I'll come back to it a bit later. But yeah.
So yeah, and so I think you were talking about Stratford, and they started running ranking battles.
Yeah, that was like the real birth of the First Strike community coming together.
Okay.
We were running on Dreamcasts back then. We had
wait. Your ranking battles were on Dreamcast?
They were on they were on Dreamcast
Oh no.
because that's all we could afford. Our setups were basically a whole assload of Dreamcast and PS2 converters because everyone wanted to use their Namco sticks and
Uh-huh.
Soul Calibur 2 sticks back then,
Oh,
which
the
were
Dreamcast stick was. I hated the
yeah.
Dreamcast stick. The Dreamcast stick was.
I surprisingly liked it
Did you like
actually.
it? Oh, I hated that
I
stick.
suppose I got used to it. But yeah, everything was run on Dreamcast. We had
Uh-huh.
loads of like controller ports and stuff. We had those really old CRT VGA monitors we just get
Mhm.
off very cheap, and we just had our little ghetto back-to-back setups because you can buy VGA splitters quite cheap.
Uh-huh.
So we had that set up, and that actually ran for quite a long time. That ran, I think the first season ran for 12 roundbacks, I believe.
Uh-huh.
And each one had at least like a turnout of maybe like 17 to 18 people. So it was actually a lot of interest, and there were like people from Sheffield coming down as well.
Wow.
And it was actually the Sheffield guys, which well, actually no, it was a London guy who knew a friend from Sheffield. He came down, and I just hung with them. So really good guys. And in fact, that Sheffield guy's armor, just to
Okay.
So yeah, so basically it was really good back then. I mean, there was people from different areas and stuff. That was one time where you can't underestimate someone playing on a pad just because not playing on a stick. They can be equally as good and stuff. Yeah, that was really good. And that was the first instance where I saw the UK versus France 5-on-5 because I've heard that maybe UK have a bit of a thing to try and prove. I don't know what's going on back then, but that was quite epic to watch. And if I remember correctly, I think the UK did get a bit bodied by the French, which was all good. And that was the first time I met Billy Kane, one of the OG players. The other 4 players I don't think are in the scene anymore. Mimosa wasn't at that event, but I think Billy Kane was like in and out of the UK quite regularly with these ranked battles. So that was the very first season. And then the second season, when our big arcade called Trocadero was around. But if I give a bit of history, Trocadero was basically the highlight of London. It was basically the go-to place for all the arcades and stuff. 3 floors of arcades. It was basically paradise. Everyone's paradise, basically.
Wow.
Yeah, it was awesome. So then we had. So just before the second season of Ranking Battles, I'm not sure who arranged it, but we got some brand spanking new Versus City cabinets.
Wow.
They were literally like probably straight from the shipping container.
Wow.
And so they were in mint condition, all running Third Strike. And and this is funny actually because I was actually in Trocadero at the time. In fact, I think it was the launch for the first season 2 ranking battle, and the venue was Trocadero. It's going to be arcade, so I thought I could get there a little bit early. And I think it was about 1-2 o'clock when I got into Trocadero. There was nobody around these brand spanking new cabinets. And the best thing is that all the Third Strike cabinets were on free play.
Wow.
People were walking past it, not even realizing that free play was flashing on the screen. So I was rinsing probably for like non-stop several hours until some more people turned up. And the sticks and buttons were brand spanking new. And I'm thinking like, have I been playing on trash sticks all this time? This is the experience I want. I was doing like all the moves and stuff so easily, and I'm thinking I want to replicate this experience back at home. And that's when I started to get into like stick modding with joystick modding, which came in later. So yeah, that was it. So we had our first ranking battle on arcade, and I definitely remember correctly. We had the biggest turnout, and I think it was 30 people.
30 people. Wow.
I still remember the bracket today, and that was also the time when there was too many people. We had to go for single elimination. Best, I think it was best 2 out of 3, and I got blown up in the first round, so I was a bit gutted. But that was the first time when we had so many. We had 4. I think in total it was about maybe 4 or 5. I think there was maybe 6 Versus City cabinets back then. In fact, actually, I just looked on my Facebook album, and I do actually have a picture of this actually. I'll bring it up very quickly because that was the time when basically people got really excited about these new cabinets because obviously they're brand spanking new. Yeah, if you just hold on for a minute, let me bring it up, and I'll just paste it in for you.
Sure.
If it loads up. Yes, here it is. Pretty epic picture actually. Let me copy that in. I'm going to paste it into your Facebook.
Okay. Let's take a look at it.
Have a look at that. I think that should link you straight to the photo. Or in fact, actually, if it doesn't, go to the very bottom 3 pictures. Those very saturated photos. But yeah, back then, I mean, that was those pictures were taken at the time of the ranking battles, and yeah, everyone's excited and stuff, and that's when we got loads of people like suddenly getting into third strike. So season 2 became very popular because of the arcade format.
Mm-hmm.
And that was also one of the times when I actually started taking my camcorder and actually started filming matches. And believe it or not, some of those some of that video footage is actually still on YouTube, and it's actually on Raji, which is one of our other old school players. He actually made a YouTube channel which basically archives. He basically digs in all the archives of all the, or maybe most of the Third Strike ranking battle matches, and he puts them on his Facebook. Sorry, his YouTube channel, and yeah, I mean, and I still see matches myself playing Yun and Yank, Ken, Makoto back then, all back in 2003. In fact, I should have linked you to that before we started this podcast, but that's where you can basically find most of the really probably the most oldest
there's
strike matches.
There's young Vinny right there. You see it on the stream.
I
don't know if you see it on the.
I don't know. I'm not sure who that person is, but he was a really. But, you can see so many of those just in the background, like people are like literally queuing up. And the best thing was they're all on free play, so
wow.
You know who wouldn't queue up? And he had like maybe like 4 cabinets, I think.
And this was around 2003, right?
2003. That was the time. So that ran for quite a bit of time, and then because it was on arcade formats, we had some of the foreign players coming down. We had Billy Kane, which was a bit of a regular, and in fact, just during that period, there was another player called Oni, who's a really good guy, friends with Armour, and that was the first time I actually had like a whole week. He had the house to himself for like a whole weekend. There was no parents around. So that was the first time I went to my first strike all-nighter session, and that was the first time I actually had. That was my first experience binge playing third strike, like literally playing to the early hours of the morning and just have just a mess around with different players and stuff. So that was really cool. That was the first time I played Billy Kane when he like bodied me in like 50 games to 2, some ridiculous like large win ratio. So I was pretty much on the bottom seed when it comes to like the level of play, but I learned a lot from that, so it was all good. So fast forwarding on for quite a bit. So they ran, Third Strike ran for quite a while, and then I'm trying to remember.
So did Billy Kane like obviously, for those of you who are watching and who don't know who we're talking about when we're talking about Billy Kane is it's kind of confusing, right? But Billy Kane is a French Third Strike player.
He is.
He's believe it or not, he's probably older than us, right?
I believe he is. Yeah. I think it's.
And so I always like it when I meet Third Strike players that are older than me.
He looks his frame was very different back then. He was actually very skinny back then. So I don't know where. Sorry, by the way.
No, but yeah, you can follow him on Twitter. He still tweets and he still comments on the fighting game community. But Billy Kane, Cycle Steve, Billy Kane mained Yun. He was a Yun player. So how instrumental was Billy Kane, in terms of helping you get better with your character? Because he was really strong back then, and I'm pretty sure
he was extremely strong. He was actually one of the biggest threats when it came to any ranking battle. Like he always places in the top 3, or like always squares off with one of the organizers. In fact, that was one player which I haven't mentioned actually. He was a guy who actually arranged the ranking battles, and his name is Hon Yip, or his alias goes as the HY. Really good guy. In fact, he's still around. Surprisingly, unfortunately, he doesn't play Third Strike anymore. It's just one of those live things. But he definitely encouraged a lot of players to really explore the game, not just play it casually, but really like explore why this game is just really decent and stuff. So alongside him and Billy Kane, that was the first time we actually started playing. And I didn't really mind losing so much because we were just playing over and over. And that's one thing which I appreciate with these top players. They will keep playing you and they'll keep beating your ass over and over again, even if they have to double perfect you. on a few occasions. But the thing is, you just learn. You learn to adapt, and that's when you start realizing they're adapting to you. So you have to start counter that sort of mindset, and that started to form a basis of basically how the game works and why the game is considered, really deep. A lot more than I thought than Street Fighter 2 back then when I messed around with it. Because obviously, when you have the parry system, it takes those mind games to another level, and that's one thing I'm thinking that this game is awesome, and I can see why it draws so much popularity.
That's
And
funny
back then,
actually
that
that
was
you. It's funny that you mentioned that the whole thing about parrying, taking the game to another level. Because it's funny because parrying is precisely the thing that a lot of Third Strike critics point at, right? To say that the game is trash. It's funny because like all Third Strike players they understand exactly what parry does to the mechanics of
exactly.
the game and the way and the meta. But a lot of people point to parrying, like people who don't like Third Strike for some reason, who hate on it. They always point to parrying. Like you never felt that. You never felt that parrying was a
Oh,
mechanic that was
definitely
kind
not.
of.
Definitely not. I mean, I definitely remember the back in the days when people just to play Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo on the Super Nintendo,
Uh huh.
and they just pick the shadow counters, and all they can do is jump hard, kick, sweep, and literally that was the only thing they can do.
Uh
And
huh.
I'm thinking, if I know you're going to do that, then I want to punish you to stop you from doing it
Uh
and
huh.
force you to play to my rules, my game style. I don't want you beating with the same tactic and over because I think back then I just thought it was cheap.
Uh huh.
So I thought this was like a golden opportunity to say in the game, you can't spam this tactic anymore. I'm going to make you do something else which is outside your comfort zone and abuse you for it,
Uh huh.
sort of thing. And when they start realizing that and they start adapting back, that's when the game really becomes a lot of fun. And especially when you're playing with among friends, you can actually just joke around and stuff. Yeah, I know what you're gonna do. Yeah, I'm gonna do this. And I thought, no, you thought I was gonna do this, but I thought, yeah, I'm gonna do this, what you thought I was gonna do. And
Uh huh.
it just goes. And when we had that weekend when we were just playing very casually, we had so many laughs. It was just so funny. And then there was another player who attended that, and surprisingly he's still around. It's Rehan. He's also known as the chef, and I definitely remember the set I had. I think he blew me up 20-0 in a Ryu mirror,
Uh huh.
and his tactic was basically super up to Shin Shoryuken, get you in the corner, make you guess, am I going to do universal overhead into into super, two low shorts into SA2, I'm going to throw you. And that just boggled my mind. And that's when he showed me that, yeah, the mind games are real. So that was quite memorable.
So I think maybe now's a good time to go ahead and take our first break. But when we come back, um, maybe we can move on and talk a little bit about Absolution 2004 because that's the Absolution that a lot of people outside of the UK are most familiar with
That
because
was the biggest turnout in the UK. So yeah,
because
that
that's
comes.
when that's when a bunch of Japanese players came over.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so for those of you who are just tuning in, you're watching the Mutant Experience with my special guest, longtime Third Strike UK veteran Rakurai. And so we're gonna take a few minutes, and then when we come back, we're gonna talk a little bit more about UK Third Strike, in particular Absolution 2004. So don't go anywhere, guys. All right, guys, welcome back to more Mutant Experience with my special guest tonight, UK Third Strike veteran Rakurai. So, after some digging, Rakurai, I was able to find some of those Trucadero ranking battles. I think this is from season two. Um, I,
I give props to people who actually keep hold of his. My God, yeah, I remember
I
that.
actually, when I actually remember those times when we had to like, record matches with cameras, and when I and the trick to doing that is you can't watch the match,
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
Because if you
That's
watch
a
the
kind.
match, the camera will sway because you're just
Yeah,
instinctively gonna
which
follow the action.
that's exactly what I was doing when I recorded that video, and it was it's wobbly.
And so what you have to do when you record matches, you have to just look at like a spot on the screen. And you just have to
Yeah, that's
stare
true.
at it, and you just cannot watch the match because
But
if
I
you
didn't want
watch
to
the
watch it. I
match,
don't want to watch that spot because I just want to see the sick action on screen. We're
yeah,
talking like high level play, and that's something you can't really ignore. So,
yeah.
but yeah, that's a good
But
point.
yeah, this is so tell us a little bit about this match. Since
um,
we got it up here.
Dennis, I don't remember anyone called Dennis back then. I think it was just one of those new players who just wanted to try and get into it. But the
But
HY
you did
is
talk about the H, right? And
the HY is the person behind all the ranking battles from season 1, 2, and 3,
hmm,
and basically he was the guy the guy to beat basically.
hmm,
He can use all sorts of characters. He can use 12. He actually won one of the ranking battles using 12 as well. At
wow.
one point. But his main character is actually Chun Li, which people kind of think he's a bit cheap and stuff. But he's actually legitimately a very good player. He's a very he does more than just spam hard punch. He understands how to do the resets, like the head stomp to do dash and I think jab dash under and all that stuff. Those crazy stuff which we normally don't
Hmm.
spend the patience to practice. So yeah, he was basically the guy to beat basically. Probably on the same level as Billy Kane back then.
So it seemed as though from these Ranbats you had a lot of good character variety in your scene back in the day. We have these two players. We have I love this guy's name, Stalwart Samurai.
Epic name. I got to give props to that.
Stal-
But yeah, I think back then people never really understood what a tier list was. I mean, like I said back then, I was using 12, which I
uh,
thought was a fun character.
uh,
I didn't really have any reference at all to who is the best player to use and stuff. I was just a bit fortunate that I found Yon fun, but I never knew for a moment he was top tier. I just fell in love with the character. I just loved how you can be creative with the Guinea Jin, and yeah, that was yeah. No one cared about what character you're using. They just care about beating you, which was always a good mindset. So that was good.
when do you think's the last time you watched seen these videos?
Oh my god.
God.
Um,
Like Third Strike is so old that
yeah,
like I actually enjoy watching like old Third Strike videos.
I
I
would.
mean, you learn very little from them, but like they surprise you sometimes. Like I remember in a previous podcast, I had another OG Third Strike player from Texas, Haas, and we were watching Xian versus Valle, and Valle was red pairing in like
Oh, I remember
1999.
Shin. Yeah, yeah. I remember that
But
name.
like,
Yeah.
when do you think's the last time you saw these videos?
I really don't have a. I'll probably say easily 6, 7 years ago
Uh huh.
because I think back then I thought these videos were just gone, like dusted. I mean, no one, it's kind of like pushed to the archives.
Uh
It's
huh.
just, I mean, you can tell by the video quality, it's just so bad that
Uh
you just you don't want to watch it because it just looks, this the typical shaky camera footage which people can't really watch for so long,
huh.
and I'd rather like watch a live, live feed sort of thing. So.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I believe there were more than that, but I think those are the ones which really got picked up on.
Hmm.
That was the only time I bought a camcorder in. But yeah,
And so we're showing a match now between Vince and Arma.
Armor, yeah,
Arma, you had mentioned him before the break.
yeah. I'm not sure why he picked Akuma for that round.
Uh-huh.
I think he was just trying out new characters and stuff, which is always a good thing.
Mhm.
But again, he was actually one of those players which he places high. So he often places top three, particularly in the first ranking battle season.
Mhm.
So he was one of the people to look out for. But awesome guy. I've so much respect for this person. He taught me so many things and stuff. Even though I've kind of, I mean, obviously I've played more Third Strike than he has. He loves Guilty Gear more than most games.
Mhm.
But yeah, he was like one of the real OGs for Third Strike, and one of those people who's just damn good. And he is definitely the original Yun OG. I don't know. I don't care what he says. That's how I see it. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, shout outs.
And here's a here's another match that's actually pretty interesting. Um, let me see if I can bring it up here. So Vince versus Morning Call. Who was Morning Call?
Oh, Morning Call. He was a Hong Kong player who
Oh,
I think
okay.
he came over. I think he came over just to study or something. He didn't stay in
That
England very
arcade looks.
long.
Sorry, I don't want to. Sorry to interrupt, Rakurai, but that arcade looks wild. Like you see
It
the
is, but
lights. It's
but
like
to be
it looks
fair,
like a strip
those
club in there.
lights, those lights are actually the flashing lights you see on the Versus City cabinets, where those orange star ones. I think the
Uh-huh.
first generation ones. Those are just on and off and stuff. But the actual ambient lighting was so dim,
Uh-huh.
it makes the Versus City cabs so alive.
Mhm.
And they did that deliberately because people just walked towards it and said, "What's all this flashing light business all about?"
Uh-huh.
And that's where all people. It's quite clever, you know.
Yeah, because the whole point was to get someone to play the machine,
Yeah,
to get
yeah.
people to put money in it. Yeah.
I definitely got played, and it definitely got mashed up for a long time. I mean, those sticks were just nearly broken, to be honest.
Mhm.
But there was still, for that during that time, I think they were still quite new anyway. It's just over the years they just got abused and smashed, and God knows what. There was always like maybe one or two buttons not working and stuff. There were times when I had to like try to get a win streak with just 5 buttons, maybe like no like I had to play with no like punch, so basically means no throws. But
no, no
but
one, no 1, 2, 3.
saw that as a challenge. I saw
Yeah.
that as a challenge. So I didn't think it was a bad thing. It kind of made me try to think, adapt, and try to adapt the fact that you have one less button to play with.
Uh-huh.
And I still didn't mind that.
Uh-huh.
I mean, yeah, the other side's going to keep throwing me and stuff, but the thing is, I know that's going to happen, so I'm just going to exploit it.
Mhm.
So yeah, obviously there's a point where it's too broken, it's unplayable. That's like if like 4 or 5 buttons not working, or it just doesn't work altogether. So
And here we have a match: HKC versus Raju.
HKC he was actually one of the probably like I think he was like nearly on the same level as my young back then, but he
Uh-huh.
was actually he's also another Hong Kong player.
Okay.
And also one of those players who gets feared quite a lot. I think he was maybe quite. Maybe I'd probably say he was definitely one of the more experienced players who came over from, as a foreigner.
Uh-huh.
Because when it came to most of the tournaments, he was actually around the ranking battle season for quite a while,
Mhm.
and he was always getting top 8. So he was one of the people who, who always stood out, and also gave more reason for players to hate Yun because they can't stand his Genny Jin. And when I was doing the Yun tutorial video, which I'll go in later, I actually realized why he was so cheap. And it was actually illustrated, but I'll come to that later. But yeah, HKC was a fantastic player, and I learned a lot from him. I loved his having Yun mirrors with him as well. So
And of course, we have. I'm showing another match, and these are two names I actually do recognize: Ryo Yamazaki versus Chunkus.
where do I start? I mean,
so where? Tell me a little bit, because I know a little bit about Chunkus, but Ryo Yamazaki, he was because I knew back in the day, for some reason I knew that he played Urian, right? Um,
yeah, I do. He played a fair bit. I mean, he was quite active in the fighting game community, but I've not really kept up with that guy for a long time.
Yeah.
But he definitely played a multitude of games. I don't think Third Strike was his main game though.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, it might have been Guilty Gear, but yeah, But Chunkus, he's been around for pretty much forever, and I don't want to say too much because I don't want to talk down on people generally, but he was definitely someone who stood out in the fighting game community for what he spoke about. He was a very outspoken person, but putting personality aside, he was actually a very feared player in terms of fighting games in general.
Hmm.
His main game was actually Alpha 3, which he was pretty much one of the best in the UK
Hmm.
quite easily. He was basically the guy who basically everyone wanted to beat when it came to Alpha 3. But he was equally, I mean, he was his Ken, for instance, is just still ridiculously solid. He
Hmm.
can actually compete against the French quite easily, the way he plays. I mean, he used a few other characters. He used Akuma and maybe a few others, maybe Yurin and Yun. But his Ken was basically very feared back then. So he was definitely one of the better Kens back then.
You know, one thing that I noticed, you know, from watching, you know, a lot of those early UK videos, is you know, the play style in the UK seems very aggressive. Like, you know,
Yes.
was that how you guys liked playing Third Strike? You know, back in the day, just constant
Um,
movement, just because it seemed like you guys were just constantly just going at it, just.
Yeah, we were going all balls in, but I think what I suppose one of the driving forces behind that play style,
Mhm.
it was certainly a play style driving factor for me when I downloaded back in the days when we had IRC and we had those file servers, those you had to use bots to download certain things and stuff. And they always had these very obscure files which just never make it onto the internet because obviously bandwidth back then we had no YouTube, nothing like that. We're talking about 2002 back here.
Mhm.
We had there was these file servers which held these rips, probably VCD video clips, and there was one clip which was the very first Japanese co-op battle, the verse 5-on-5. And the first time I watched this, it absolutely blew my mind on how aggressive these Japanese players were.
Mhm.
And they actually, the rate they were playing amongst all the matches, it actually made the game quite exciting. And I'm thinking, if I could play like this and learn all these things, I think the game can also be not only fun but also very entertaining to watch. And when you hear all the Japanese players going absolutely bananas in the final,
Mhm.
it's almost like the game is just built for hype. And I really love that sort of like environment. Like everyone's getting excited, going over the top and shouting and all that stuff. I just think those sort of atmospheres are absolutely fantastic, and it only drives people to play the game more. So I suppose maybe we were trying to mimic the play style of those Japanese players to try and make it look cool in a way. But I think it's just obviously when one person plays this sort of style, there tends to be a carbon copy happening amongst other players, and then they try playing that style as well. But I don't know. I mean, that's maybe the way I see it. That's how I sort of started playing it.
Mhm.
But maybe they've just been very. I mean, maybe they've just been more familiar with how the game works and how being aggressive is actually the way forward and not to turtle so much.
Mhm.
That's probably my take of it.
And so the UK, you know, the first time the UK got like, you know, a real good dose of Japanese level play was Absolution 2004, right? So tell can you talk a little bit about that experience? You know, like, you know, how did that come about? You know.
um, Wow. Well, to be fair, I mean, this is from my experience back then
Uh huh.
because I never actually lived in London.
Mhm.
I never properly started living properly in London in just over 6 years ago.
Mhm.
But I was kind of on and off visiting London every so often just to play Third Strike.
Mhm.
But the real moment when the Japanese came and made a presence was definitely Absolution 2004. We had 10 Japanese players coming down. Those names I wrote down earlier.
Mhm.
I can't remember all of them, but the ones that definitely stood out. We had Daigo, we had Izu, who won the first SBO, Ino, Deshi, RF, Kuni, who was a Super Turbo player, and a Japanese female player called Riri,
Yeah.
which was pretty much blew us out of the water because we were definitely not expecting any females to enter any fighting game tournaments, let alone like a massive 100-man tournament. In
Mhm.
fact, I think one of the photos which I linked to earlier from my Absolution uh, album, I believe there were 100 players in that tournament, and we
Wow.
had we had to have 8 groups, which had maybe about 9 or 10 players each,
Mhm.
and it was basically a group system, so everyone played each other once, and the top 4 go through. I from my experience, every single Japanese player bodied me. I didn't stand any chance whatsoever. And so I think it was there was a yeah, I think one of Izu's teammates, Kyo, that's his name, Kryo, and he was the first guy to actually properly body me with Ken. I didn't stand any chance. He busted me 2-0, and but I made it out of my bracket, my group even. I scratched 4th place by the skin of my teeth, and when it came to double elimination, I think it was like a 64-man bracket. My first player was Chikyu, which he actually featured in Evolution during the 5-on-5, the 12 players. He was around, and yeah, he absolutely destroyed me. He used Necro, and he completely destroyed me with Necro completely, and that was actually just embarrassing. I didn't really stay on very long, but thankfully I was not the only player. When it came to casuals, the Japanese players were basically just all over the cabinets. They were just bodying people left, right, and centre. It was quite a slaughterhouse to say that for that at least. And it wasn't just Third Strike. We had Alpha 3, CVS2, and Super Turbo. And I believe, if I remember correctly, Daigo pretty much won all the Street Fighter related games. And it's quite evident from one of the photos I think you'll find in that album, where he's holding a whole load of Korean arcade sticks, which were basically the first prize.
So here's a really good picture. That's there you are, Vinny.
I believe that's oh god, yeah, that's easy. I don't know what I was thinking.
And there's Billy Kane, right? That's Billy Kane.
Yeah, that's Billy Kane. Bass was one player I missed out. He was definitely in the list as well for Alpha 3. D44 Bass, you've seen him all over the place. Yeah, that was quite hilarious. But yeah, I think there's a picture where Daigo was literally struggling to hold all his prizes.
Wow,
that's hilarious. That's that guy in the beard. That's Armor. That's guy I spoke about earlier. You might be able to recognize the 4th person in that the one in the afro. If you look very carefully, I could probably tell you what his name is, but he's an American guy. If that's a good clue.
The Trocadero picture.
Yeah, the one with the 5 people. So you got
gosh, what's his name? Why am I forgetting? Well,
I'll give you a clue. He's actually a commentator.
No, I know. That's Ski Sonic. I don't know. I'm just.
That is definitely Ski Sonic.
I'm just old. The name just was. Wow, that's.
He was in my group as well for First Strike.
Rare footage of Ski Sonic without a hat. Yes. I guess Daigo gave Ski Sonic his hat. I guess.
I actually don't know what happened in the background, but you're definitely right. That's Ski Sonic, yeah.
And there's young Daigo.
Wow, this is 2000, so that's 13 years ago. That's a picture of me and Daigo. I look so freaking young back then. It's crazy. I've got those big little eyes. It's crazy. That was the time that was the first time I met Daigo as well. So that's cool.
And these were these the setups at Absolution right here? These cabs right here. What the setups were like, or was this Trocadero?
Just for the record. It looks like a dump in the back. That is not Trocadero, by the way. This was literally Trocadero management saying, "Here's your tournament, and here you go." And basically, they just gave us a back cave. So, so basically, there was hanging wires and stuff. The walls were all rotten and half plastered.
They just basically gave you like a space, I guess. Yeah.
It's basically like the underground of Trocadero, and quite frankly, in a way, it was also a bit embarrassing that the biggest tournament in the UK is in the back cave.
Because the ground, it just kind of looks like dirt or like gravel.
It is dirt. The whole floor is dirt. It's concrete. It's basically like you've just moved into a trashed house, basically.
Oh, yeah, here's a better picture of it right here. Wow. Oh, but all those versus cabs are sexy though. Look at that. Wow.
Oh yeah. But the cabs were probably the only thing that really stood out as really mint looking. But yeah, the rest was god awful.
Wow. Oh wow. Awesome. Where are all these cabs now? Vinny?
Right, these cabs. This is really fast forwarding. They're actually now in the new Heart of Gaming venue,
Okay.
which is run by Mark Starkey. There's been a few like talks about it on maybe some of the Sure You Can news channels and stuff. It's been moving around, but that's where they are at the moment.
Okay.
In the state they are right now, they are absolutely trashed. They are pretty much beyond repair. Well, they just about work. I mean, you can still get into like you can
Well,
still joystick and stuff and get into the inside, but the doors and the mechanisms they're all broken.
wow.
So, but they still work.
Well,
So
they've had a lot of wear and tear. I mean, all these years.
Probably 15 years worth of abuse easily.
Yeah. So there it is. So they just basically told you to have your tournament in like a lot, I guess.
Yeah. Super Turbo's run on Dreamcast. Bless that console. I don't know why we didn't have it on arcade. Maybe they didn't have the boards and stuff. But
this is about
there was a lot of games. There was a lot of games run there.
This is about as old school FGC as you can get, right? This is.
But Absolution 2004 was the pinnacle of fighting games back then. That was basically, we've never imagined to have 100 players entering Third Strike, and to have like the Japanese presence and a few American players, and I think there was actually a Canadian player down there, and I'm trying to remember, Jay Blaze. He actually placed quite high in the tournament. In fact, actually, just within that same album, I did actually post all the groups, all the players that are in there. So there was CVS2, there was Alpha 3, there was Tekken Tag Tournament.
I'm sure the stream monsters recognized at least one of the players in this photo, maybe.
God, really, he's lost how much hair. Yeah, that's well. Yeah, I think it's right. I won't make it to the quiz because it's quite obvious.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that's it. And that's one of our top. I think I can't remember his name, but he was actually one of our top Alpha 3 players. No, I can't remember actually. It's been that long ago. So.
Okay, who are these people? Rakurai. We need a little help with that.
Right. So the guy on the left is Deshi, one of the Japanese players, and on the right, you probably guessed it by now. That's Riri, which I was talking about, the female Third Strike player. And out of 100 players, and I kid you not, she actually came 7th, and she lost to Izu in the losers bracket. And
who did Riri use again?
She used Yang, but there's a very funny there's a funny ongoing joke behind all this, because and I'll try to say it without cracking up, but a lot of players thought that was Daigo's mother.
Daigo?
And actually people thought that was the case. And I'm thinking, maybe that's why Daigo's so good. But
people thought she was Daigo's mom.
Literally, everyone thought that, and we were all cracking up and everything. But what was more interesting when I actually had a little chat with her, and she's been playing in tournaments since Street Fighter 2 Turbo, hyper fighting. So
well, first of all, Rakurai, you speak Japanese, right? Like a little bit? Or...
No, I learned a little bit, but I don't really get up to that level. My Japanese is pretty much minimal. I can't speak fluently, so just letting on that.
So Riri, was she able to speak English? She spoke English?
Yeah, her English was okay. I mean, with most Japanese players, the only person who really spoke really good English was D44 Bass and Kuni. Kuni's English was perfect, so we all got to chat. But obviously,
Bass went to Absolution. Bass went here too, right?
He was there. Yeah, he competed in Alpha 3, and I believe he came. I think it was second place.
Did he win CVS 2?
I can't remember the results from CVS2, but I know he would place very high in that.
Probably.
I think he may have been in the top 4. But he was definitely there. In fact, I mean, there should be photos of him in that album. But yeah, there's so many memories.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm trying to remember. That's Zakuta, who is one of our UK players. He was actually one of very few Third Strike players to use 12 as well. That guy in the blue top, that's Dukas, who was actually he actually qualified for one of the SBO spots in 2005 with Ryan Hart. Unfortunately, that was the time when we also got bodied because the third player couldn't make it. But that's for 2005. That goes on later. There was too many players back then. The person eating those chips or whatever it is, that's the HY, and the person on the left is a player called Heat, who he lives in Manchester now. That was one of the memorable pictures. One.
Now on the left, the player in the leather jacket, that's the ST player. What's his name? Matsu.
Hollis, that's Hollis Wong. Hollis Wong.
Oh, okay. I
Yeah,
thought
he's no.
Never mind.
He's actually, if I remember correctly, he was an Alpha 3 player.
Oh,
so
okay.
we had a very big presence for Alpha 3. In fact, I mean, I was saying earlier that the Alpha 3 scene was very big, probably just as big as Third Strike. That was a game that everyone wanted to play. So, but obviously when Third Strike came along, then people jumped on that bandwagon. So, but yeah, I mean, if there was one game that the UK actually stood a decent chance on, was Alpha 3, and it definitely wasn't Third Strike.
I'm just trying to find that picture you're talking about with
Yeah, that's
with Daigo,
So
right? Oh, there. Here's I found the picture here. There it is.
yeah,
This is Daigo holding all his 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 spoils of war.
It's not Colombia actually, but yeah. Literally, I mean, I felt those sticks. They're the Korean style sticks, but legitimately, those sticks are actually quite heavy. So he was just about holding on to them.
Wow, and these are and here's the wall with all the pools, right? These are all the pools. Wow.
Yeah, it was big back then. I mean,
before Challenge and Smash, right? Paper
everything
brackets.
was printed on A1 paper, and it was all printed out, and basically people just ran random shit on it. I mean, people had started doodling and stuff onto it. Even and you can just see below they had the 64-man bracket, which ran. In fact, the tournament was. I mean, it had its bad sides. Absolution wasn't the most organized tournament in the world. They had to run the next. They had to run the double elimination bracket the next day because we can only have Tropicana for a certain amount of time before I have to close the shutters. But yeah, I mean that went on forever. So, and when I was sleeping in my hotel, I did actually see the bracket beforehand, and I saw Chiku next to my name, and I was like dreading, how do I beat this guy? And I'm thinking he's going to use 12, so just use Ken just to make it impossible. And he used Necro, and he obviously destroyed me. So, but those pools ran for absolutely ages, and because it was like it was group format, so everyone in each group had to play at least each other once. And during I think if I remember correctly,
this isn't the Third Strike bracket, is it?
No, this looks like something else. Yeah. Actually, I'm not sure. Actually, don't say.
Because I was looking for your name, I couldn't find it.
That looks like a different game altogether. Yes, yeah, that's definitely that's Third Strike. I'm definitely in one of the groups. I was in the same group as Kyo and some crazy ass Hong Kong player who destroyed us. Actually, I can't remember. But I'm in there somewhere anyway. But as you can see, because each player had to play each other once, and there was 8 groups, and we had 4 cabinets. The first round went on for absolutely forever. And
now, why are some names in bold?
That I'm not entirely sure.
Are those like the ones that are seeded, or?
No, there's definitely no seeding. But there was seeding to an event to an extent, but it wasn't by the bonus. I think it was just whoever paid money and stuff. But yeah, I'm in group. I'm in group 6 there actually. Yeah, that was. But like I said, pretty much all the groups, the Japanese players always placed top. They basically put at least one Japanese player in each group, and it was always them. So they basically destroyed us.
Wow, and just looking at this.
Right back then, I was just called Vince. I just kept it simple. So.
Oh, okay. So you were just Vince. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
That's why. I mean, just looking at this bracket. I mean, Absolution. You had players from all over the place.
everywhere.
Wow.
It's absolutely insane. Like I said, we had a player from Canada, Jay Blaze. He was actually he was a Euro player back then, and he placed I think at least maybe top 8 or top 16 possibly, but he was actually definitely up there. And he showed us the true power of charge partitioning, which none of us really thought much about. We were first introduced to charge partitioning, surprisingly, by the HY, and we thought that maybe he invented that term charge partitioning.
Mm-hmm.
It's somewhere on YouTube, but he did actually make a tutorial video about of how to use Remy and how to use charge partitioning. In fact, if you look at that video now, there's a lot of stuff which you see on there which are just so flashy, but I think in practical terms, because he's so bottom tier, nobody really picked him up.
Mm-hmm.
But he was actually he was surprisingly a very good Remy user as well. But his tutorial video is definitely worth having a look, just for a bit of nostalgia.
Yeah, it's and Absolution. What was the date for Absolution again?
Oh my god. It might be on the poster, which is in the album, but it was, I believe it was the summer of 2004.
And you know, one of the reasons why I think a lot of people don't remember Absolution is because obviously we all know what happened. What also happened in the summer of 2004, right? In terms of fighting game lore, you know.
I never really kept up with the fighting game wars or any of the drama stuff. I was just
Well,
there.
I'm not war, but lore. I
Yeah.
mean, in fighting game history, I think a lot of reasons why people don't, especially newer players, they don't know about Absolution 2004 is because of obviously Evo Moment 37.
Oh,
Right? Because
yeah.
Evolution happened in the summer of
Oh,
2004 as
actually,
well.
yeah. Yeah, Absolution happened before.
Yeah, it happened right before Evolution. Yeah.
Yeah, so basically, Daigo was fresh,
Yes.
fresh from fresh from demoralizing the whole of the UK, ready to take on America.
Yeah, yeah. He took on the kingdom, and then he mopped up the colonies. That's what he basically did.
One of the highlights for Absolution back then was actually Super Turbo, when we actually had one of our UK players facing Daigo in the final. And those videos are definitely out there. It was actually probably one of the most hypest finals we've ever had, because obviously we had UK in the final, and Daigo was there to, he was looking there to win, but we had a good chance. And then when Daigo switched from Ryu to Boxer, then it was basically game over, and it was GG's.
Which is exactly what he did in Evo 2004. I think Daigo was playing. I think he was playing. He was playing. Who was he? He was playing John Choi, and then he
got Ryu,
and then he switched to Boxer, and he just I feel like Absolution was like his I feel like Absolution was his like his warm up, right? His for Evolution.
He actually turned into the Red Bull, the Red Buffalo.
Yes. All right. So I think now is a good time to take our second and final break. But when we come back, obviously we'll talk a little bit more about Third Strike in the UK post Absolution. I guess that's a good term to use, right, Vince? Post Absolution, because that's when things kind of settled down. And so when we come back, we'll talk a little bit about this what happened with the Third Strike after Absolution, and obviously we'll talk a little bit about the current state of UK Third Strike. So for those of you who are just joining us, once again, you're watching the Mutant XPerience with special guest UK Third Strike veteran Rakurai, and we'll be back in a couple minutes. Don't go anywhere, guys.
Cool.
All right, guys, this is Mutant XP. Welcome back to the Mutant XPerience podcast. My special guest tonight is Third Strike UK veteran Rakurai. So, Rakurai, one thing I wanted to ask is, you didn't start with Yun, but you were mainly a Yun player during the height of UK Third Strike. But then you started dabbling with Makoto, as can be seen in this video here. Is that primarily because of Absolution 2004 and when you saw Izu play? I mean,
Um,
or were you already starting to try to dabble with Makoto?
I did start out with Makoto back in season 2 ranking battles. I just
Okay.
dabbled about stuff, but I did find that because people are getting really annoyed with Yun and
Uh-huh.
people keep complaining it's so cheap, I feel I had to use like
A cheaper
a more
character.
well, not quite cheap, but cheap in a different way.
I think Makoto's
Cheaper
cheaper.
mind games.
I think Makoto's cheaper than, but
It's because I think because the game was quite new and there wasn't much information being spread about how to deal with certain matchups.
uh-huh.
People didn't know how to deal with Genny Jin, so everyone just thought that was just the cheapest super ever.
Yeah.
And obviously, the first thing you should do is never to hit buttons because his priority takes precedence on MPU press.
Uh-huh.
So people hated that, and I'm thinking I'm just going to get very unpopular this way. So maybe for me, maybe I should use a character which has a bit more mind game flow to it and more a sense where I can actually beat someone because I thought they were going to do this, but I did this option, which makes the win a bit more convincing. So I picked Makoto because obviously she's quite flashy character. I originally got inspired watching the first 5-on-5 co-op in the first Japanese tournament 5-on-5. And there's this player called Jay who absolutely mopped the floor with
Yeah,
I think we
Jay.
had a 3-win streak.
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw that instant one grab kill against the Akuma player, and he took his entire life bar off, I'm thinking if I can pull that off, and considering there's so many Akuma players, I'm thinking I actually might actually get a few wins out of it, in tournaments and stuff. So I started dabbling about with her, and I just grew to love her flow and her she's just a really fun character. Later on they found out she's actually quite high in the tier list, but I just think she's fun. I think it's the case with a lot of people who find picking her up. She is actually a fun character.
That's another thing, I guess, that's lost right now that there's no arcade scene. Like, you used to, like, first of all, you had to work to get videos of tech, right? Like, it wasn't like you can't just log, like you were saying earlier, you can't just log into YouTube and then, and then get something, right? Like, it was, like, how did you get your, like, Japanese footage, or how did you get your videos and stuff in the UK?
I think a lot of people from the older generation, probably the era where I was playing, we had, and it's still around. We're all aware of IRC, right?
Yeah, IRC.
We had those very obscure bots which act as file shares if you send a whisper message, and then you can download all these very hidden away files which you normally can't find on the internet, or maybe just blatantly just illegal or whatever it is. But basically, that's how I got the 5-on-5 footage, which back then broadband was absolutely terrible. Sometimes you had to grind up maybe like a whole week just to get the entire footage. And because you're always stuck in a queue, and if you miss your queue, you have to go to the very back before you can download it. It was just agony back then, but the wait was worth it because you can learn so much.
So like you finally get the tech, and then, like, how exciting was it to, like, back in the day, you got the tech and you just couldn't wait, right? Like, you couldn't wait to go to the arcade and, like, try it on somebody.
Yeah, that's it. But yeah, because online play didn't come around until
Xbox.
The first generation Xbox had Third Strike in the Anniversary Collection. So yeah, obviously because I was living in Warwick, I had the only competition I had was my old friend Songro, which we would play on a regular basis. He was my only opponent, who actually, in fact, a shameless plug, he was the first person to demonstrate an unbuffered standing 720 just on the spot. And everyone knows how to do that. You just spin a stick stupidly fast without jumping or dashing, and that was crazy. But yeah, I mean, the way I kind of leveled up is to try and record all the matches if I can and try to learn what I'm doing wrong and stuff, maybe learn a few things back and forth. But obviously there's an extent to how much you can learn just by playing against one player, because obviously he was a Hugo character specialist outside and this pretty much why I started to go to London a bit more, because back then I was starting to love Third Strike a bit more back then. So I wanted to better myself, and the only way to do that is to visit London on a regular basis. Now, back then, I was actually quite fortunate that train prices were actually quite cheap. So I managed to like fork out like £5 return or something ridiculous. You have to book 2 weeks in advance. But I was pretty much going to London every month when I could afford it, and just hoping for people to just jump on the cabinet, people jumping on the side and everything. And there were times when I went down there because First Strike was so popular. In fact, most of the games on the Versus City cabs was so popular generally. The controls were just so battered and so destroyed is probably the only term to describe it, because no one really fixes stuff over there. So there are times where I travel an hour and a half just to get to this arcade to find that maybe one player side has a broken light punch button, or maybe 2 buttons broken. But because I've traveled all that way, and it'll be a shame if I wasn't playing anything and taking a few challenges, I saw that as a bit of a challenge. Try and play Third Strike with no light punch or no medium kick. And surprisingly, that also played another mind game, because because sometimes there are broken buttons on the other side. So if medium kick wasn't working, I knew that. So I had to formulate a strategy on how to win with broken controls. Or maybe crouching wasn't working, so I had to try and play without crouching or down parries. It was annoying. No one really liked to play on broken controls, but obviously when you travel so far and you don't have much time there to try and level up, you just got to work with it basically. Just deal with it. So
I'm just showing some footage of you at a 2v2 tournament. I think you're playing Ryan.
I'm playing Ryan, yeah.
Yeah, Ryan's Goki here. And so there was a time when you guys started migrating to PS2, I guess because of convenience, right? I
mean, definitely.
Yeah, I wrote something earlier in the chat. I don't think the PS2 version of Third Strike was that bad.
It's pretty good actually. I mean, it was 10 times better than the Dreamcast, and because there were so many people using PS2 to Dreamcast converters, which were just an absolute pain, to plug it directly into the console was just great. And obviously, you had very, I'd say, reduced input lag. It wasn't fully arcade perfect, but it was the closest we can get to.
What do you think about the rumors of Third Strike coming to Steam?
I would absolutely love the fact that if it was on stream, but
Steam, I mean Steam, like Steam.
Oh, Steam, yeah. I think as it stands right now, Third Strike is a very niche game, and obviously because it's not really been patched and stuff.
Oh, that was sick! What you just did.
That was a bit lucky.
No, that was sick.
I had to scrub it out against Ryan. I mean, yeah, wow. That was probably the worst thing you should ever do as a Makoto player, do random super.
You see that?
But to be fair, Ryan wasn't using Ken. He was actually just messing around with Akuma. So to be fair, he wasn't playing his best, but a win is a win. And there was money on the line, so I had to do everything what it takes.
Well, then it was a serious match. If there was money, then
there was money. So
it was
I
a real
couldn't
match.
say so I had to scrub it out in the end. So.
So let's just kind of move on a little bit here. So after Absolution, obviously, more and more Third Strike players were started cropping up. A lot of that has to do with the Daigo parry and so forth and so on. Yeah. So you actually went to Japan in 2007, right?
Yeah, because people were very, very keen on getting good at Third Strike, and you hear about SBO being the most prestigious fighting game tournament in the world for Third Strike. And because of that, because the level was actually getting quite high in general, then we all started to try and go for the SBO qualifier events, which happened. There was a few happening in Europe. In fact, the very first team that made it into SBO was Dukas, which was one of the players you just saw earlier, Ryan Hart, and also a Japanese player who actually came over to study but decided to be on the UK team, which was also pretty sick. And he was a young player, but quite unfortunately, Yusuke couldn't make it. So basically, it was 2 versus 3, and basically I believe they got bodied, which was quite unfortunate.
They should have put you on the team, and for sure you guys would have qualified.
Well, to be fair, I didn't enter that particular tournament, and quite frankly, I would have probably lost in the first round anyway. And they probably wouldn't have put me on the team because I'm not good anyway. I was still a fresh learning get into
Fresh
the
meat,
games.
fresh meat.
Fresh meat, exactly.
So tell me what it was like, when you went to Japan. Well,
uh,
well, first of all, who did you go with? Like, who did you?
yeah, so basically, it was interesting because we actually went as a big UK team generally
Mhm.
because it wasn't just Third Strike that we managed to get a qualifier spot. Reinhardt, Christina, and a Japanese player who also decided to be on the UK team called Tishimon, they actually qualified for Tekken 5. So they were also competing at the same event I think it was SBO 2007. And then we had the UK team finally making making their debut in SBO. And there's actually a video on that where we went absolutely bananas, like the camera was going all over the place. We were just ballistic. So yeah, so a big crowd. I was just there just to experience Japan and just join in the experience sort of thing.
So actually, on your
It's,
YouTube channel, I think there are videos where I guess you. I don't know if you were the one taking the videos, but I guess you were. I guess you were videotaping
that
the whole thing. I
this
guess.
documentary this was my work. This documentary was cringe-worthy
But this
because
is
of my hair.
but you did this,
My
right?
hair was yeah, yeah. I did all the editing and stuff,
Uh
so
huh.
just to get the hype going for SBO.
Uh huh.
But back then I had very long hair, and
Mhm.
when I look back at it, I'm thinking, what the hell were you thinking? I looked like some drunken hippie or something.
Uh huh.
But and yeah, uh, but aside all the bad hair,
Uh huh.
that was actually
Oh my
yeah.
gosh!
I
There
decided
you
to,
are.
yeah.
Oh my God, Vinny.
I don't have much to say on that. I
Oh,
tried. I was even thinking where I should just delete the video because I don't want anyone to
you
see how
actually
bad
you
I
actually look like Psycho Chronic there. The
was.
guy who runs the Psycho Rarity channel actually.
Okay. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh yes, that's another player, another old school player, Wax.
Yeah.
He's a very good Ken player, and the guy in the red T-shirt, you recognise him? That's Ultra Yox
Uh-huh.
Ken player. His tagline was "Wax on, wax off," which is all cool. And then we had a few, and so we had some other First Strike players coming on. They were quite new as well because they wanted to experience France as
Fake
well. They came
fake Chunkus.
Yeah. That's an ongoing joke.
So
Very good guy. Yeah. So.
so I don't I guess I shouldn't have started on. I guess I shouldn't have started in part one because you're still in the UK here.
It's a very it's actually a very long document. It's like a long sort of video long of what we've been through. But when it came to actually in fact the finals were actually very hype, and that's when Harmonaz was really like putting UK on the map because he was pretty much regarded like pretty much the best player in the UK back then.
Mhm.
Probably on the same level as Ryan Hart back then.
Mhm.
So we and it's very funny actually because even today, Harmonaz still makes the odd appearance,
Yeah.
to some of the Divided City events. He doesn't really play much at all. He comes back and he still bodies people.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. Doesn't
He bodied me, right? I think we did a first to
yeah.
5. It was 5-4 or 5-3 or
It's
whatever.
scary because he doesn't really need to practice. Yet he just comes in and just 2-0s me and.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I mean it's a shame though because unfortunate for the UK team, we also got bodied. The team was C4, who's also a very old school Chun-Li player, another player who most UK players hated because he thought Chun-Li was cheap. So it was C4, Raju, and Harmonaz, and the first round was against, I believe, was Rao, Mester, and some other player.
Uh-huh.
And they put on Rao first, Rao Chun-Li.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, 2-0. I think it was 2-0, 2-0. I think we maybe got one round, possibly. But other than that, we got destroyed. It was an OCV. So it was quite disappointing. But to be on the floor with the team, in the center and stuff, just giving them some moral support, that was also a good experience.
So in this documentary, you covered them going to qualifiers too, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was actually another one which I made back in 2005, and unfortunately that's disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we had the qualifiers in Stuttgart, Germany, where we did surprisingly well. We entered 2 UK teams. There was 10 teams in total, and basically it was a group format, so every team had to play each other and stuff. and we actually placed both UK teams placed in top four. Unfortunate for us, the first bracket was UK versus UK, so we had to basically
Oh, that's
fight
lame.
out. It is lame,
That
yeah,
that
but
had to have been rigged. It had to have been rigged.
I
You know
think
that was
I think
rigged.
I think that was a secret strategy
That was
to try and
hella
get the
rigged.
UK. So, but yeah, and then so came to the final, and
Uh,
basically Billy Kane destroyed us all, and then they got the spot basically. So fair play to them, fair
uh,
play. But unfortunately, that documentary is missing somewhere. It's probably on someone's hard drive somewhere, on someone's dusty hard drive somewhere, because I definitely spread it out to people.
mhm.
I've no idea if it's ended up on YouTube, but if it's dead, then I think that's definitely one to watch if you can find it.
So, tell us a little bit about your experience in Japan. In terms of how much Third Strike did you play and what arcades you went to and stuff like that.
Oh well, Japan was almost like going into a time machine. I
Mhm.
mean, the first thing that really shocked me was how advanced their phones was when I got to the airport. I mean, I had one of the most latest Windows phones back then, one of the
Uh,
expensive ones. Their cheapest low end one was 10 times better than the one I had, which was
uh,
very demoralizing. So I thought, yeah. But aside all that, Japan was amazing, extremely clean for a very busy city. We
mhm,
went straight to Tokyo. We weren't messing around. We just want to get into like play games and stuff.
mhm,
And I think one of the things that really just blew me away was how clean the arcades were,
mhm,
and how and the courtesy was just the level of customer service there was just beyond what I thought. Is that they treat you like God over there.
mhm,
They even at one point I witnessed like one of the attendants walking around just watching the machines, even asking one of the players to take their hands off the control so they can wipe it and say carry on.
mhm,
And I'm thinking that's first class service. That's just we'll never get it in Trocadero. In fact, if you ask for that, they'll just spit in your face.
mhm,
So it's quite crazy. But aside from that, that was also one of the places where that was actually the first time where I actually properly got demoralized,
mhm.
because getting a win on third strike in there, regarding the level of play, because obviously this was SBO season, so you had all the top guns out there. I would be happy just to get a game off anybody. I was basically getting slaughtered left, right, and centre.
Wow.
And then when we had this foreigners tournament in Game Newton, first time being there, awesome venue, and we had some of the American and Korean players. So basically, it was just a foreigners only tournament, no Japanese players.
Yeah.
My first opponent was Pyro. I couldn't get a single hit on him, or even a single move to come out.
were
He
you
was
using were you
always
using Yun or Makoto?
I was using Mikado,
Okay.
and he just caught me over and over again with the ambiguous dive kick crosser mix up over and over.
Mhm,
And I was out so quickly.
mhm,
I was just sulking pretty much most of the time, because everyone else was like kind of like maybe getting past the first round, second round, and
mhm,
stuff, and then it came to yeah, it was very demoralizing. And for a moment, I actually got a bit angry for a while, because I was just getting so frustrated. I came all this way to get bodied.
mhm,
So I thought I'll take a break for a bit and just explore Japan for a bit. Because in the end, I'm here for 11 days. So I might as well just explore
mhm,
everything else, check out the other games and stuff. The game selection is just insane.
mhm.
One of my favorite places I went to was the Yes Arcade in Akihabara, where they had, and I think they still have it. They have a Super Turbo machine where I think it was only 10 yen for a credit, because obviously we do a lot of shopping and stuff, and we have a lot of loose change left over. And so I had loads of like 10 yen coins and stuff. And I thought, how do I get rid of them? Just play Super Turbo and get bodied. And I was there for quite a bit of time, and then that's when I really started to get into Super Turbo as well. I thought this game was like a bit beyond what I was thinking.
Uh-huh,
This game has a bit more potential and a bit more hype, so I started playing that a bit.
uh-huh.
And because I was doing most of my shopping in Akihabara, and I'd done all my shopping, just finish off at Yes Arcade, get rid of my loose change, level up in ST,
Yeah.
happy days. So that was quite a good experience there.
Yeah, my first time was well, you've seen the videos, but yeah, my first time in Japan was this January, and every time people ask me how Japan was, I always tell them, I think I went 10 years too late. which is a good and bad thing because if I went there, like if I went there 10 years ago, I would have bought so much stuff. I mean, I would have just because I stayed in Akihabara too.
Yeah.
I stayed in around that neighborhood precisely because of
You
all the
stay in a
shopping and
capsule room
stuff.
by any chance?
You know.
Those capsule rooms look so claustrophobic. I didn't want to
No, no, I got a
you know,
proper
spend
hotel.
time in it.
It's
No.
I'm too old for that
Yeah.
stuff.
If I was on a salary today, I would have like bought out Akihabara. I would just buy everything.
Yeah.
But
And
I
this
did
was
have a
this
bit of
was
job.
before Airbnb too, right? So
Yeah, exactly. So
uh,
good times, good times.
do you ever feel like going back to Japan?
I'd love to go back.
Whether it's for Third Strike or not, do you ever think
Well,
about?
this is the thing because yeah, obviously times are changing. I'm a little bit older and stuff. I want to be a bit more
Yeah.
responsive and all the all the life stuff and everything.
Hmm.
I mean, every so often I do still love my fighting games and most recently more music games these days. But it's more like I just want to like I'm very casual now. I just want to just play just to enjoy myself for a bit and
Hmm.
just for a bit of a break. And at the same time, while I'm in the country, just check out a bit of culture
Hmm.
because um, legitimately, I do like Japanese culture.
Hmm.
I love, absolutely love Japanese food. That was a problem with the UK team because there was a lot of things they didn't want to have, so they just kept going to McDonald's. And I just felt very insulted every time they
No,
just went, oh, let's get
no.
some fries and get the teriyaki burgers. No, I want sushi. So
They
that was
were.
awkward. But aside all that, everything about Japan, I went to temples. I went
Hmm.
to just do a bit of sightseeing, seeing some of the cherry blossom.
Hmm.
It was beautiful. I was quite lucky to hang out with Ryan's girlfriend back then, who was Japanese,
Hmm.
and she was a very good host. So we just spent a bit of time just checking around the whole place and stuff. That was awesome. And but but on the subject of like enjoying things outside Third Strike, we're watching, so we're in SBO watching the finals and stuff. That was all cool. We saw the fireworks and all that, and then we got invited to an after party for all the foreigners to come down and just chill out and just have a party. That was really, in fact, I actually had more fun in the after party than watching SBO in general. I got to meet the stage announcer. He was a really good guy. The Japanese finalists, I think one of them was Maida, I think. They were getting drunk all over the place. They were doing all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
I actually wish I took more pictures actually because some of the scenes were just hilarious.
Hmm.
And but then looked at the other UK players behind me. While I'm having a bit of fun, they're all like having like serious first to five matches with Pyro and some of the other American guys. And one of the other players I actually met down there was the Wolf. Actually, the two guys, the Wolf brothers,
Hmm.
Graham Wolf, and I can't remember his brother's name, but they were in the Hyper Street Fighter qualifier spot, if I remember correctly. And that was actually the first time I actually had a reason to absolutely hate Hyper Street Fighter 2 because I think it was Graham Wolf I played. All he had to do was get one hit, one jump in, and game over. One jumping hard kick, crouching medium punch to standing hard kick, dizzy, and then just finish. And I thought, I'm not playing this game again. So,
I guess I guess the reason why well, one of the reasons that I asked whether or not you would be interested in going back to Japan for Third Strike is because my now that I'm a full time Third Strike journalist, uh, I have certain sources, and a little birdie has told me that there's going to be some UK players that are going to Japan next January for Co-op
okay.
Cup. Some of the next gen UK
Told me about
players,
that.
and so I mean, I was just wondering if I was just wondering if you still have that kind of like
Mm.
that drive to like, because I personally,
Yeah.
I think it would be really cool if the UK team. I mean, I don't know what their entire team is. I don't even know if they have enough players for an entire UK team. And obviously, that by next gen UK Third Strike, I'm talking about the gutter trash kids, right?
Yes,
And I can
yes.
call them kids because I'm old as dirt. So,
Yeah,
and they
we
are
can do
kids.
say that as well. Yeah.
They are kids, and I'm talking about the
Definitely.
gutter trash kids. And I just think
Yeah.
it would be really cool if they had someone like you, on their team, someone that's kind of been there, to kind of every good team
I
needs
don't
like a
know.
every good team needs like a veteran, right?
And
Like a
a
like
classic
a
OG.
like a battle hardened vet on the team, and I think just to like drop names, but I think a really cool UK team would
Hmm.
be like maybe yourself, 3J, Harley,
Speaking of which, we had some
and
hilarious team names back in the day.
Criminal. um, I think that'd be, I think all of the Gutter Trash kids should go to Co-op Cup, and
It'll be an interesting dream team, wouldn't it? But
yeah.
I think these days, I mean, obviously, because I've got my responsibilities and
Mm.
stuff, and quite frankly, I mean, I do realise that on a side note, I do martial arts as well. Just to let you know, and I
Yes. For
actually,
those of you who don't know, Rakurai does not just play fake Street Fighter. He's actually an actual. He's an actual martial artist.
okay, well, I'm not a street fighter. I don't go around and go asking for challenges and stuff. By all means, I can't do a dragon punch or do a fight or anything like that. No, I'm not like that. But no, I do martial arts in real life, and I do find that I'm actually, sad as it sounds, but I'm actually more successful in my martial arts career when it comes to competitions than Third Strike.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I do have like a mini trophy cabinet back in my family home, and I do actually have like maybe one or two trophies from like a few small tournaments from playing Third Strike, but that gets overshadowed by the number of trophies I win in martial arts tournaments in general. So I'm thinking because of that aspect, I think I'd rather be spending time focusing on training and getting better on that, and try to enter these competitions because I know I can do well, and it also gives me a bit more confidence as well to say that this is my specialist sort of area which I can actually compete in. So, but going back to Third Strike, personally speaking, I mean, I probably won't see myself as a very consistent player because I've had previous problems where I do need to play like maybe for an hour or so before I actually get to my full stride. But from playing Third Strike for so long, I will probably make a very good coach more than anything. I like to like encourage people to look out for certain things and stuff.
You could be like Bill Russell. You could be a player coach.
I could possibly, yeah. I like to like motivate a few players and stuff. I mean, when I have these 3-on-3 tournaments, I always get my teammates together and start talking strategy and stuff. Because I do find that when it comes to team tournaments, I feel there's not enough synergy in some of the players between each other. Like, what are my opponents? Which character do they use? Which characters they don't like fighting and stuff, and try to exploit that. And I feel that if there's a little bit more in that, I feel that in terms of teams trying to compete in these tournaments, I think they can do a lot better if they just had a little bit more thought to it. Because obviously, I played loads of different players and stuff. I tend to see the tendencies of certain players who like to do certain things and stuff, and if they tend to counterpick certain characters that you pick, then I start to see those things, and then I just put that into a strategy. And I think actually the last team tournament I entered was actually with Howry and 3J in one of the, I think it was possibly one of the side events, not a Gutter Trash event. And we actually ended up winning it, which is a good thing. And funny enough, I didn't actually know there was money involved in it, so I was just playing very casually. And then the money came in, and then Harry PayPal me and said, "Okay, here's your share." Okay, cool. I was expecting like 4 or 5 quid, and I think it was like 30, 40 quid. I'm thinking, wow, good job.
Yeah, right.
And then maybe I'm thinking, okay, I could get back into it maybe.
Because one of the things that I observed when I was over there in the UK, and I don't know if anything's changed, and I don't mean to say this as a negative or as a criticism, because you're right, Vinny. When we get older, we have different priorities. We just we can't grind as much as we used to. But I did notice that there is a there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of participation between the Gutter Trash kids and the old school, I guess what we call the pre-Absolution 2004 Third Strike crew.
I like to call them we're just the true OGs.
Yes, the OGs and the Gutter Trash kids. There doesn't seem to be the OGs, and I know like a lot of the OGs, like for example Harmonaz and Raju, they don't live anywhere near London. They're family. Yeah. They have families and they have responsibilities.
Family takes over. I mean, Harmonaz has a kid now, and probably teaching Raging Demon to a little girl now right
Yeah.
now, so that'd be sick.
So like in the grand scheme of things, like this isn't really a bad thing. It's just
Oh, it
it,
isn't.
because in our scenes in America, we have new players, but a lot of the old players are still around too. You know,
Yeah.
and so that's the one thing that I kind of noticed, that that the old school players don't really participate,
Mhm.
currently. And so when I saw you, when I see you attend Gutter Trash, and I saw that you came out when I first visited London, I thought that was really
Mhm.
cool. And
Yeah.
it seems like you really do, you really do want to help these new players. So what are your thoughts on like some of these on some of the Gutter Trash kids, these next gen UK players, 3J,
Yeah.
Harley, Criminal, George,
Well,
so forth and
yeah.
so
I
on.
mean, putting into perspective, I
Uh-huh.
mean, we're going about 15, 15, 16 years ago.
Mhm.
We never had YouTube or any of these like tutorial videos readily available.
Mhm.
And again, you had to really dig into the underground of the internet to actually find these like this information and stuff. Today, I believe that because we have social media and YouTube, and we have Twitch and all sorts of ways to share knowledge, it's actually today is actually much easier to pick up the game rather than grinding out in the arcade. And thankfully, it was a little bit cheaper now because you can grab First Strike off PSL or Xbox Live for 10 quid or $10 in America,
There was actually a
and
sale recently where you could buy.
£3.79, I
It was,
believe. Yeah.
yeah, it was like four
So
dollars American. Yeah.
So anyone watching, you've got no excuse. You have to buy this game, otherwise, you should be here. So just saying. But anyway, but yeah, I mean, it's because there's so many tutorial videos out there,
Uh-huh.
and when I've got to admit, I did think that Third Strike was actually completely dead after the rise of Street Fighter 4,
Uh-huh.
because the biggest pinnacle of one of the biggest pinnacles of Third Strike history was when Justin Wong came over to Battle of Destiny 2008, and then basically Justin Wong squared off with Ryan Hart on stage
Uh-huh.
for a best of three, and some you may know about it, but well, actually, it's basically Evo Moment 37 again, and you guys have probably seen it already, but Justin Wong gets bodied again. He gets bodied by the full Chun-Li parry. But just saying, I mean, shout out to Justin Wong, really good guy. But yeah, after that, Street Fighter 4 was debuting, and First Strike just fell off the map.
Mhm.
People tried to because it brought in a new generation of players. So Street Fighter 4 definitely wasn't a bad thing. It got fighting games on the spot, but it did actually overshadow Third Strike to a point where you go to a session maybe in London. In fact, one of the ones I definitely remember was Harrow, run by the Denton brothers, who's going on to do other things. There were like possibly 14, 15 Street Fighter 4 setups. There was one lonely little PS2 running Third Strike just in the corner, and there's only 2 players playing on it. And then when we try to get some of the newer players playing Third Strike, they criticize the game instantly. So they jump into the tier list. The game is old, the graphics are old and stuff. The game is broken. It's never been balanced. So they write the game off before they can even give it a good chance. And maybe the fact that maybe there are just veterans out there will probably destroy them because they're quite good at Third Strike already, and they just feel they just don't want to get bodied. So that's very unfortunate. And because of that, people did literally just disappear. So most of the players from my generation, they've just start move on, myself included. I decided to focus on my martial arts career. It only really came back when the new venue, which Mark Starkey has created, called the Heart of Gaming, and that actually got Third Strike interesting again, because obviously by then the Trocadero arcade was completely shut down in 2011, I believe, which was basically the go-to place for Third Strike. There was another arcade called Casino in Goose Street, which was also the place of Third Strike between 2007, around that period. That also closed down. So basically, the only way to play Third Strike was online, and obviously, online GGPO Fightcade, that was the only real platform you can actually play against other people. So the fact that harder gaming came around and the fact that they even bought those old versus city cabinets from Trocadero, it's like reliving that again. But obviously everything's on free play, so that actually got the drive going again. And then we decided to run our first streamed event called Third Impact, which brought in the likes of 3J, Demo, Samraz, all those other players. And then it just got rebranded to Gutter Trash, and that's where it all started. So it's all good. We've had a good drive there.
And so, I guess now's a good time to. I know we're running a little bit out of time, but in terms of player coaching, I think there are a lot of people that still need coaching, Rakurai, out there, especially if you look at some of the Third Strike that people post on YouTube. Sorry, that was a really horrible segue, wasn't it? It's just we're running out of time, so I'm trying to figure out a good way to segue it to pack it up.
All right.
So I guess now's a good time to talk a little bit about pack it up. So
Okay.
so Rakurai, are you familiar with this part of the show?
It's actually the one segment I actually love about your podcast.
It's the only thing that you like about my podcast. Be
seeing
truthful,
Ricky Morrow doing that dance was just epic. I believe I didn't see that, and I'm thinking, wow, victory pose.
Okay, so for those of you on the stream, which is probably zero, who've never watched the Mutant XPerience before, basically what I do every week is I scour the internet for bad Third Strike, basically. And I'm starting to notice trends, Rakurai. There's a lot of
I do indeed, yes.
There's a lot of Urian, there's a lot of Goki, right? There's a lot of Urian, a lot of Goki, and a lot of Alex players.
Can I say another thing as well? A lot of carbon copy Akuma, Urian. Yeah. People copying stuff off each other. And I won't say too much.
Makoto's very popular too online, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So
but yeah.
So anyway, so I thought what we could do is we could take a look at 5 of the to me top nominees for this week's Pack It Up Award. So I'm just gonna go ahead and so did you play it yet? Don't play it yet.
Not yet. When you're ready.
Actually, you can just go ahead and play it.
Okay.
All right. So
I'm getting now.
All right. Okay, so without further ado, here's this week's Pack It Up. All right. So nominee number 1. If there weren't any more reasons why Goki's SA1 sucks, here's another one. Watch as this player completely whiffs his anti-air attempt.
Oh my god.
Nominee number 2. We haven't had a bad punish nominee in a while, and so this definitely takes the cake. Nominee number 3. This is actually from a tournament that happened recently. I think it happened somewhere in Europe. But basically, watches this Speaking of Urian, this Urian player is a little too hungry to chip his opponent. And decides to burn the meter. And Rakurai, actually, just listen to this.
No.
Don't you wish you were a kid again, Rakurai? When you could be excited to body the computer? I mean, that just. Anyway, so those are this week's nominees for Pack It Up. Let me know which nominee you think.
They're great. I mean, number 4 is probably the worst. He's biggest to get away with that. So yeah, I'll probably say that one, but I think they're all pretty big.
I had to include number 5. I don't know why. This guy was so hyped beating the computer. It was just how do you pop off against the AI? But speaking of YouTube Third Strike, you actually created some good YouTube Third Strike content recently. Well, actually, you released it recently, well, somewhat recently. about a year ago, I think you right. And so I'm talking about your Yun tutorial. So I thought maybe we
Oh
could,
yeah.
we could end the show by talking a little bit about your Yun tutorial. And some people on the stream already said it. AC Slayer says it. This is one of the better produced Third Strike videos I've ever seen. In terms of this Yun tutorial. So tell me a little bit about your sort of what got you to like make this video. Like, what were some of the what
Yeah.
was your
Yeah.
motivation for creating it?
Well, I think definitely the motivation behind making that tutorial video is how lots of people hated Yun, seeing him as a cheap character and pretty much brain dead in a way.
Mm,
However, saying that, I mean, obviously, because people keep looking at the tier list and stuff, a lot of people tend to think if I pick Yun, I can get a free win.
mhm.
And the only thing that happens is they just get absolutely bodied.
Yeah.
And they almost get destroyed like
My Yun is routinely trashed.
yeah, but
Even by
almost like
beginners.
it's almost like they're using Yun in the most wrong way possible.
Uh-huh.
It's like you don't mash light punch all the time to confirm like Street Fighter 4 and everything. And if you have meter, you activate. And sometimes I cringe so much at these people doing these things. I feel that I need to like show them what you should be doing, like more like the core fundamentals. And one of the things I tend to find is that people pick Yun. The moment they start learning it, they go straight to learning all the combos, all the getting Jin combos. Yes, exactly. But the other thing which they really miss out is how to play Yun as a character, because they're all fixated on just learning all the flashy combos and doing the damage and being as cheap as possible. So that in itself becomes a weakness. So what I found with a lot of online players, people are trying to jump on that bandwagon. Yes, they can do the combos, but when they don't have meter, they're actually a sitting duck. And I think there was one replay where I played I think it was one of the top ranked players on Xbox Live. And I managed to double perfect him because he had no fundamentals outside not having any meter. So I wanted to highlight the fact that, yes, Yun is a cheap character, but you still have to work for your win. And you can do all these different ways and stuff on how to create your own combo. And things you can do when you're not using it as a combo generator, but more of a way to pressure your opponent. For example, I never see many people activating on knockdown. They just activate it when they get the 1-2-3 target combo. And I like to see a bit more varied Yun play rather than just sticking to set ways of doing 1-2-3 over and over and stuff, and understanding why Yun is getting Jin is so strong and the reasons behind it and stuff. But again, it's just I think the real reason for making that tutorial video is just to pass on my knowledge, because in the end, seeing young players playing on that sort of level is very rare these days. I love young mirrors, even though it's a bit crazy. It's just it's a bit like Ken versus Ken. It's just one of his matches to just find very very fun and stuff really. But I like to see a bit more young play. There's 10,000 Ken players out there. There's 20,000 Chun players, but probably maybe a handful of Yun players, because I feel that there is a bit of a learning curve to Yun in general. So I'm hoping that this tutorial will probably give players a little bit of a better idea on how to use Yun in a better way. Not saying, this is you do this and that. It's more like how to explore the character on how he can really put pain into your opponent, basically. And that's what I really want to get across.
True story. When you first, I think you sent me an early link to the video. I was tempted to pick up Yun, and then my arthritis in my hands flared up. And I was like, you know what? I don't think this is a good idea. And so I just decided, I'm just gonna maybe focus on Ken a little bit more. But I don't know. Like I think I secretly always wanted to use Yun. I don't know what it is, but I definitely agree. Like I think there's so much about Yun aside from Ganasian that players need to master and that players need to understand. So one of the questions that some of the stream monsters had, I think AC Slayer had a question. Exactly how long did it take for you to make this video? Because again, the stream monsters can see. You
Oh,
know, I mean,
yeah.
look at the production value. I mean, it's just amazing, the editing and everything. I mean, how long did it? I mean,
This was an on and off project.
uh-huh.
This actually went on for several years, believe it or not,
Mhm.
because of that thought saying that there's not enough young play out there, or people just constantly hating the way I play. It's all cheap and everything. And obviously, I put a lot of time and effort into learning all the setups and all the potential and such, really. But when I really took it seriously, and this is from recording many hours of video footage, it took me over a year,
Mhm.
and that included many late nights, getting no sleep. I'll tell you one thing though, it was painful creating it, but if it helps out people, that's all I want basically. And again, it's just one of those things. I just want to, because I'm not taking Third Strike as serious these days. I'd rather just use that knowledge I've gained over the past 15 years and just give it out to you guys and just do what you can with it. I'd really love to see our Good Trash team have a really solid Yun when they go to Japan, and
Mm.
I'm hoping this tutorial will help them out.
Yeah, I noticed that there aren't really any Yun players, right? Like strong Yun players in this new generation, which is pretty surprising.
Yeah, Criminal is actually quite good with Yun, surprisingly. He's been using it in casuals, but obviously he prefers Chun. And there's another guy called Billy. I think he's in Scotland, possibly. I think
Mhm.
he's on Xbox Live, but
Mhm.
he's definitely leveled up. But other than that, Yun is one of those characters. He is top tier. He is cheap, but he's also not easy to fully master as well.
Mhm. So for those of you who in the stream who are curious and want to check out Rakurai's very excellent Yun tutorial, you can go ahead and visit his YouTube channel. I'm going to go ahead and type it in the chat. It's youtube.com/Rakurai Media 1. And also, Rakurai, aside from your YouTube channel, which not only has this Yun tutorial, but it also has a lot of classic UK Third Strike footage, including your documentary, where you obviously follow the UK team towards their journey to SBO Quals. You just started a new Twitch channel. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think that one of the driving forces obviously is I like to get a bit more Third Strike coverage on streams these days, because obviously, since the rise of Street Fighter 4, Third Strike has become a bit of a niche these days and is very underappreciated.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, when you see the standard of play online these days, I mean, no offense to most of the players, but it's god awful. And so I
Well,
like to like
we just watched Pack It Up, so.
exactly, and is that times 10. In fact, I actually made a large archive of bad Third Strike
Oh well, then there you
plays,
go.
so I could probably send some of them over to you. That's not a problem. But no, generally speaking, I just want to just show a bit of like good gameplay footage in general,
Uh-huh.
And one of the things I wanted to do was to use that stream to try and bring out some top players, and then like make it entertaining, and hopefully I don't get bodied as much.
Mm-hmm.
Which is ironic because when I first launched it, I was playing against one of your American guys, which I've never played before. His gamer tag is Sandybags, and basically he just I didn't pretty much get anything going towards him.
Yes.
He absolutely destroyed me on my own screen.
Yeah.
So
No, well,
that's sort of good.
Sandy Bags has destroyed a lot of people on their own streams, including me. So don't feel bad. Sandy Bags is a very strong Hugo player. He's the XBL gatekeeper, I guess, is a good.
Maybe that's why there's no one on Xbox Live anymore. You just scared them all off.
Yeah, I think he may be scaring people off. Rakurai needs to quit it. He needs
I
to
know.
find another character to play or something.
I'll go back to 12 maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. So aside from Third Strike, which is obviously going to be like I guess the focus of your stream, I mean, are you looking to like invite people over to play, or are you gonna try to maybe start anything online? Because I know one thing that's happening a lot in America right now is a lot more people are starting to do like online tournaments and stuff. Any plans on doing that, or you're just gonna kind of start out kind of slow?
Yeah, I'm kind of, to be honest, I don't really have much plan on what I really want to do with this channel.
Uh-huh.
But one thing I like to exploit, and I do it myself. If I see a Third Strike stream, and I see some mediocre to bad play, it's not very common. I mean, in most Third Strike streams are actually really decent. probably on a higher level than myself.
Mhm.
But if I see a stream, I feel like I need to get in this sort of thing,
Yeah.
and I want to like use that as a way for people to, especially the players in the UK, to showcase the level of third strike in the UK, because obviously you don't want to be going into a lobby full of Americans where the ping rating is just so high, it's just unplayable.
Mhm.
So I see it as a way of just giving them a platform for people to watch all over the world,
Mhm.
and to see that third strike is here to stay in the UK, and we've got a new batch of blood. I'm hoping to to wreck shop hopefully, or get bodied. Either way is good. So
Mhm. And aside from Third Strike, are you gonna? Because I know I tuned into your stream a few days ago. You were playing Streets of Rage. So are you
brilliant
gonna?
game by the way.
What other games do you plan on featuring in your on your stream?
I mean, I've got to admit, yes, I've kind of gone off third strike for a bit. But
Uh-huh.
saying that, since I've moved into my new apartment and I've got wired into it, I've kind of started playing that again.
Uh-huh.
So I'll be focused on that for a bit.
Mhm.
But at the same time, I mean, in the past few weeks, I've actually been getting back into Tekken 7.
Mhm.
I was a dreadful Tekken player back then in the day. I learned from Tekken 5 and never really got anything going. But yeah, I think it's just one of those games that just love playing just because it felt good, it felt right.
Mhm.
Pretty much any other fighting game, or maybe even some retro PS2 forgotten fighting games. I've still got my PS2 and it's still running.
Mhm.
In my archives, I just streamed Capcom Fighting Jam,
Uh-huh.
which is a notoriously
Oh
bad
god, that
game.
game.
That game is it's beyond dreadful, basically.
Yes.
And
I've
I
seen
was
that.
playing on
I've seen better Mugen games than Capcom Fighting
and
Jam.
and the thing is, I was playing on I don't have a stick, so I was playing on pad, so the gameplay was even worse.
Uh-huh.
So obviously, I wasn't doing combos or anything like that. It was just a dreadful game, basically. But I've got a few others, so just to show a bit of heritage from the fighting game scene, there's a few games that didn't quite make the cut, so it's good to just show them just for a laugh. But yeah, other than that, I'll pretty much broadcast anything.
All right. Well, I'm gonna lay out the challenge now, Rakurai.
Okay.
I'm gonna challenge you to a first to 10 in Capcom Fighting Jam. Let's do a let's do a simulcast, the first ever simulcast. You'll stream from your end and I'll stream from my end, and we'll play. Actually, I don't even know how we're gonna do that. We can't even play that online, can we? No, we gotta pick a game. We gotta pick a game that we can play online. Oh, that brings me to my last question. How about Fightcade? Actually, I have a question. Actually, how popular is Fightcade in the UK? Do you know at all? I mean, have you been on Fightcade?
I dabbled with GGPO many years ago. Quite frankly, it's definitely something. It is. I mean, back then it was like a better option than playing on the old style Xbox. Playing with their netcode, because their netcode was notoriously bad.
Yeah.
They used to delay style netcode, which was dreadful. But you had GGPO, which used obviously its no native netcode, and obviously Third Strike is a bit more playable. But you still had that problem with that slight input delay you get from emulation, and obviously it felt like a completely different game. And every time I play on that, I just feel I just can't play as I should in general. Like if I'm playing an Akuma player, and if I see them spamming Tatsus, I'll be ready to press buttons. But the time I see that visually, they've already grabbed me or done something else, and I've just stopped playing altogether, which is a bit of a shame, because obviously if the emulator was made a little bit better, or the netcode was improved, then obviously it'll be a much more viable platform. But obviously, with a lot of people who are familiar with Fightcade, it's not been updated for probably maybe a decade or so. So for me, it's still quite unplayable. So I don't really have much experience on what happens on Fightcade these days. But I do hear a lot of even some of the top players, even Harmaz sometimes jumps on and plays. So I'd imagine it's still there, but I haven't seen enough for me to really make a judgment on that.
And as far as Third Strike Online, you play on the PSN?
I play on both platforms. I think these days I play on PSN because there's a few more players. Even though the level of play is not there, at least there's still people actively playing the game. So it's better when you have like at least like a few people around, even if they're not that good. It's still good just to try other characters as well. So there might be a few characters which I may not be good at. I'll just mess around with those. I don't really look to try and win by all means. I mean, if I pick 12, I'm definitely not going to expect to win. But it's just something for the other player to experience, to show that it's not just about fighting Ken, Yun, and Chun or Shotos all day. there's a few other characters which have really good potential, but I feel that most players are just so in that little bubble of a few select characters which they don't want to explore or see other matchups being played. So I like to try and educate people, but at the same time try not to piss them off too much, because obviously they don't like losing. So I get my fair share of hate mail. So that's why I definitely avoid using Yon Online if I can.
All right, so we're gonna have to find another game to simulcast. Maybe I don't know. Maybe SNK versus Capcom Chaos. You ever played?
Oh
you ever
no.
played? You ever played
I've
that
actually
game?
forgotten that game even existed. Yeah.
Or maybe a Neo Geo
Or
game. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it
yeah.
out. Yeah. All right. Well, Vinny, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
It was great, to listen to your stories and to hear more about the history of Third Strike in the UK. I hope you keep playing Third Strike. Good luck on your stream. Remember, you can catch Rakurai playing Third Strike, Streets of Rage, Capcom Fighting Jam, whatever is his fancy. Just go to twitch.tv/Rakurai Live, right? Is that right?
Rakurai Media Live.
Oh, Rakurai Media Live. I'm sorry.
It's in the corner of your own stream channel.
yeah, that's right. Again, I'm early onset Alzheimer's, I guess. So yeah, definitely follow him, give him a follow, subscribe. If you're a baller like that, donate. Definitely help him out. And so I guess on behalf of the other Third Strike players that stream, welcome to the Third Strike Twitch community, Rakurai. Hopefully
And I'm just gonna say one thing: just play Third Strike. It's a good game.
Yes,
Simple as.
yes, please. And then definitely watch. Definitely check out his YouTube channel as well. I'll go ahead and type that into the chat one more time. Rakurai Media 1. I guess Rakurai Media was taken?
I think I tried Rakurai. Well, I'd actually took that, and then I can't remember. I can't remember the reason. This was like many years ago. But yeah.
I actually tried twitch.tv/Mutant XP. But I think I may have signed up for Justin TV a long time ago. Remember Justin TV?
Yeah.
Remember
vaguely,
that?
actually.
That was like before Twitch.
I thought that was named after Justin Wong for a moment, but yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and I don't know, but I think I may have, because there was an option where like people were phasing over to Twitch, and like you could I think you could like kind of migrate your name to Twitch, and I think I may have done that, but I think I forgot the password or whatever, so that's why I had to change my Twitch name.
I think yeah.
But anyway, so Rakurai, thanks again for joining us. Again, the early onset Alzheimer's is kicking in. Volume 8, Gutter Trash, November. I think it's November 18th and 19th.
It's coming soon. It's definitely happening in the next few months. I can't remember the dates, but
it's happening November. It's happening November.
Yeah.
And so are we gonna see Rakurai?
Yeah, it really depends what's going on. But if I come down, I might not be in the tournament. But if I do come down, I'll certainly be for the team tournament or side tournaments or whatever. Awesome. I'll be I'll try and make it down if it fits in.
Awesome. All right. So before we go, once again, guys, you've been watching the Mutant XPerience. Just wanted to let everyone know about some events that are coming up soon. TFC, obviously, the big one. September 29th to October 2nd. November 18th to 19th in Boston. Red Bull Battlegrounds is having a Third Strike tournament as well. That same weekend, Gutter Trash Volume 8, XFed, London, Violent City. Shoutouts to the Gutter Trash crew. Shoutouts to...
I also hear Yaz is coming down as well, actually.
Oh, Yaz is coming too? Great. The king of Third Strike, right? Shoutouts to Arcadium, Monday Night Fightcades. He used to run Third Strike, but now he runs ST, but he's still cool, so we're going to give him a shout out. Every other Thursday, Lost Ark Video Games. They stream Third Strike from their arcade. Once again, shout outs to Violent City. Shout outs to James and for continuing to keep that scene alive. And so once again, guys, you've been watching the Mutant XPerience. I'm not exactly sure who my guest is going to be next week, but I definitely will let everyone know by the end of this weekend. And so, once again, guys, thanks for tuning in. Rakurai, thank you for having us. Yes, Tamaraz, the podcast is over, but you can check out the replay on YouTube. So once again, guys, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next week. Thanks again, Vinny.
No worries.